you can't get full marks without it. So we start off with the structured interview with a clear definition. A structured interview has pre-written closed questions. It's asked in a formalized format by an interviewer. That's my clear definition. It is favored by positivists as it can establish key patterns and trends, and generalizations can be made. However, interpretivists are critical of this method because you cannot understand the meaning people attach to their actions without open questions. That's really how an introductory paragraph should start for a 20 marker. A definition, which theory likes it and why, and which theory would be critical of it. So I always start it with a definition and theory to begin with. So that's our little mini introductory paragraph 1. The next paragraph is our practical. So I'm going to insert, find it easier just to have practical, ethical, reliability, validity, examples, rep. There we go, just to help make it a little bit clear. So paragraph 1 is all about practical issues. Let me just take it off I'll highlight everything so it always highlights it all for me. Okay, so the practical issues here always relates to time, money, and gaining access to respondents. So practical issues. And I've done it as 2 boxes because I need strengths this side and then weaknesses this side. Freezing on me. And then weaknesses this side. Again, it wants to highlight everything for me. So strengths this side, weaknesses this side. So for practical issues or time, money, and access, I think by this point, I really need to read the item because I must refer to it. So the British Crime Survey, the police gathered detailed official statistics about crimes that had been recorded. They are an accurate record of the crimes that the police decide to make a note of. However, they do not account for crimes that have not been recorded or ones that have not been reported to police. That's clearly there for that 5 marker. So that's not helping me at all with structured interviews. Okay, the British Crime Survey is intended to discover about crimes that the police do not know about or record. It asks people living in households in England and Wales about their experiences of crime using a structured interview. To mention structured interview there. 51. I think to myself, 51,000, that's massive. So here, that to me is the Easter egg. Remember I said to you, it's like a hint in there somewhere to try and help you. If there is 51,000 people involved in that interview, that is a really large sample. They've been able to gain access to really large samples. And they can only really do that because the questions are closed. So I think, right, that's definitely an Easter egg there. And then people aged 16 and over are interviewed face to face. Okay. Over 200 professional interviews are trained to conduct the survey. Again, I'm thinking 200 professional trained interviewers. Those people have got to eat. They've got to pay them rent. So that is expensive. If they have got 200 interviewers, then that's going to be incredibly expensive to train them to conduct the interviews. So those are the 2 hints, I reckon, that they're hinting at there to try and help you use it in the item. So, right, I'm going back to my practical time, money, access. So what I think to myself is, I'm going to take that bit there and put it in that top paragraph. So structured interviews are very useful as you can gain access to very large samples, as all of the questions are closed. You can gain access to really large samples as all of the questions are closed, so they are quick to complete. In the item, just going to highlight that because I have to use it to get top marks. In the item, we can see that they have 51,000 respondents, which is an incredible, which gives them access to a very large sample. It gives them access to a very large sample. Making their research more representative and generalizable. Not going to go into detail there about what I mean by those terms yet, because remember, the American one, remember I've got a whole section of them down below. So use the item there. So time, money, and gaining access. Access is done. They're also quick to complete. So very large samples, they're quick. I'd argue I've covered it there, haven't I? I've already mentioned they're quick to complete because the questions are closed. So I'd argue I've done time saying they're quick to complete. I've definitely said that they can gain access to large samples. Money, they're expensive. Because up here, that's what they're hinting at. There's 200 professional interviewers that are trained to conduct the survey. That's expensive. And that goes on this side. So I'd say, however, highlighting everything again. However, structured interviews are expensive, as in the item, you can see they had to train 200 professional interviewers. This would be expensive to train them and to conduct the research. So they have to travel as research, as they have to travel to respondents' homes also. If you're wondering how I know that, does it say it in the item that they travel to their homes? No. In the second year, when we do crime and deviance, we study the official crime survey and the British Crime Survey, and they do them in their own home to make them nice and relaxed. And as you know, they'd have to pay to do that. You could, if you wanted to. I've used the item twice. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I thought we only had to use the item once. You do have to only use the item once, but I actually felt that I could use it twice in two really good ways. So that's why I've done it twice. You don't have to use it twice. You only have to use it once really well. If you wanted to, I haven't put her here, but you could do, if you need an item and two studies, you could add Zadesh there. And say, for example, this is also shown in Zadesh's study, as she has to travel to respondents' homes to ensure they build a rapport and are relaxed. So she travels to their home because she can build a rapport with them or relationship, that they feel nice and relaxed, and also they have young children. So it increases her response rate. The only way to really use the items is when you're planning the 20, is it just clicks. You go, oh, she did them in their homes. I'll add it in there. So practical, strengths, weaknesses. I've used my study and I've used one of the items as well. So practical is paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 is ethical issues. This is always a guide using this. Sometimes it works beautifully, other times it's just tricky, but these 20s are the trickiest questions that you get on this paper. The only way we get to them is I model them and I show you and then you practice them, and that's how we get them perfect. So ethical issues always relates to things like anonymity, confidentiality, right to withdraw and things like that. So ethical issues, anonymity, confidentiality, right to withdraw. So for ethical issues, I'm going to note that structured interviews are ethical. So structured interviews are ethical, provided that in the write-up, or provided that so they're ethical, provided that they gain informed consent from respondents and give them anonymity and confidentiality. So the use of no names or details. So structured interviews are ethical, provided that they gain informed consent from respondents and give them anonymity and confidentiality, no names or details. For example, in Bunsel's study, she uses what did I say it was called? She uses a consent form outlining her research. She uses a consent form outlining her research and highlighting that she will use pseudonyms, gosh, the spelling, pseudonyms to protect the respondents' identities. Thank you, Google. So I'm going to highlight that one because I've used a study there. The eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that Bunzel never used a structured interview and neither did Zadesh. You're absolutely right. But I've got to force these studies in and I make a point about the importance of ethics using her. So it still works because I'm making a point about ethics. This increases the validity of methods by ensuring respondents know the British Sociological Association's guidelines have been used. So, structured interviews are ethical provided that they give them anonymity and confidentiality. In Bunsel's study, she didn't actually use structured interviews, but let's just avoid that. She highlights that she gives them a consent form. She tells them she will use pseudonyms to protect them, and that will actually increase the validity because she's adhered to those British Sociological Association's guidelines, because they know their names won't be used. They know their personal details won't, so it's likelihood that they'll tell the truth a little bit more. So that's with the ethical. In against, I do need to bring it back round a little bit to structured interviews because I've definitely gone off on a slight tangent there. And I need to bring it back to being structured interviews a little bit more. So in the however, I'm going to say however, And again, you'll learn this in the second year, but with the British Crime Survey, they give them a structured interview. They sit there in their houses and they ask them, have you ever been a victim of crime? Have this ever happened to you? And they just close questions, they write it all down. However, there's a section of the interviewer which relates to domestic violence. And what happens is they leave them with a survey and they leave the room for 5 minutes so they can answer it independently alone. And they do that because it is so charged that it would be inappropriate for an interviewer to be there. So, however, structured interviews are not effective for highly sensitive subjects that can cause or trigger upset. They're not very good for it. So highlight. They're not effective for highly sensitive subjects that can cause or trigger upset or harm. This is why in the British Crime Survey, they use a survey, a self-completion survey when asking questions on domestic violence. So basically, if it's a highly sensitive subject, structured interviews are not useful, which is why the British Crime Survey actually gets them to do a self-completion questionnaire on domestic violence. So they're not that useful for highly sensitive subjects at all. So that just closes that, and that's why that's due. This is due to the interviewer effect. So they basically, the biggest issue is the interviewer effect. An interviewer there has a negative impact upon their responses as well. So that's paragraph 2 with ethical. Paragraph 3 is reliability. The ability to repeat the responses and get the same or very similar. So with reliability, structured interviews have closed questions, which means a researcher is likely to get the same or similar results if the study were to be repeated. They are reliable because they're all closed questions, which means if I repeat it or one of you repeats it, I'm likely to get the same or similar answers again. My only real evaluation that I feel I can offer here is just, however, it only offers a snapshot. Rather than offering comparisons over time. Do you remember when we did that questionnaire for methods and it was quite old about musical taste and it was rubbish because it's a snapshot. It only measures what happens at that moment. So if it's asking you, how often do you buy music? We think, well, I don't. It's on my phone. It's a Spotify subscription. It's monthly. It doesn't answer it because it's only a snapshot. It doesn't do well to do comparisons over time. So reliability is a very short paragraph, this one. And I just want to check. I've got my Bunzl study and I have got Zadesh and I've got the item. It's okay. I've done that. Right. So reliability is done. Ethical is done. practical is done. So paragraph 3 is validity. So for validity, we have to start off with the strengths and then the weaknesses. So the major reason why structured interview is valid. So structured interviews can be valid as having a researcher can be valid as having a researcher means that they can clarify any questions or points that might be misunderstood, thus increasing the accuracy of the results. So, structured interviews can be valid as having a researcher present means that they can clarify any questions or points that might be misunderstood, thus increasing the accuracy of the results. It's the only valid point we've got. However, why does it do that every time? However, having an interviewer present can cause an interviewer effect where their gender, class, or ethnicity can have an impact. So we can have having an interviewer present means that they can have an interviewer effect. And the closed questions means that respondents have to approximate their answers. So they have to pick one to go, well, kind of represents. They have to approximate their answers. So may not fully, so these answers may not fully represent their view. So it's not particularly valid because the interviewer effect can have an impact upon the respondents. And the closed questions means that respondents have to approximate their answers so that they might not fully represent their view. You could put in there about DOBASH and DOBASH. I'm only just showing you, because obviously I've already used 2 studies. I'm just trying to show you where you can put studies in to try and help you incorporate them. So if you're thinking, well, now you've just done 3 studies and you've used the item twice, it's just me trying to show you where you could possibly do it. So this is really demonstrated in DOBASH and DOBASH's study, the impact of the interviewer effect. Remember, they studied domestic violence victims. So if the victim is male and the perpetrator was female, he conducts the interviews. So this is demonstrated in DOBASH and DOBASH with the interviewer effect, highlighting that it can have a huge impact on validity and how comfortable respondents may feel. Just to show you where you can use it. So validity, I've done the strengths, I've done the weaknesses, I've fully explained why it's valid and then highlighted why it's not. Done practical, ethical, reliable, valid. Here, the other E, if you remember, is examples, which means I have to incorporate the item. Oh, it's struggling now. I have to incorporate the item and 2 studies, which I have. So they can just be ticked off. That ensures if you want top band, which you all do, you must have used the item and use two studies to make a point about the studies. Okay, so the last paragraph, because theory, if you remember correctly, I've already done because it was covered in the introduction. So the R is representative and generalizability. They go together. Rep and gen. So rep and gen, this one, I'm going to say here is that structured interviews are can be very representative. It's really struggling. I might have to just talk you through this bit. So structured interviews can be very representative because the closed questions means you can access very large samples. It can be really representative as it means you can access very large samples quickly. Not going to reference the item because I've already done it. You can access large samples very, very quickly. So your study can account for, because I haven't told them I know what representative means yet. So your study can account for class, gender, and ethnicity. It can account for differences in terms of class, gender, and ethnicity. This also means you can generalize or apply your results. It means you can generalize or apply your results and make a claim about your target population. So I'm fully explaining what rep and gen mean there because I just threw them in paragraph 1 because I thought to myself, well, I don't want to go into too much detail there. Rep and gen have got a paragraph at the end. I'll fully show my understanding there. However, I can't even move my cursor. However, response rates are an issue with structured interviews. However, response rates can be an issue with structured interviews. As respondents may be unwilling to take part. So, however, the response rate may be very low as they have to dedicate time to give to an interviewer. So I know they're quick, folks. I know they're all closed questions and you just tick them off, but people still don't want to give you their time. Busy people. And this can lower, if you're like, it's rep, it's gen, big, large samples, and they're like, well, that they might not take part, which is why it lowers it. So use the item, went through the stages. Really important you plan them. I can check the timings. Let me just check. 35 minutes. So you've got 35 minutes to write a 20 marker, which is a really long time. Methods is quite generous with it, or slightly less, planning it, like we just incorporated all the things that you need to. Anyone have any questions about that one? Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, I'll assume not. Yes, yeah.
You don't have to do like the conclusion after the rep and gen paragraph, do you? So you just like finish it after that?
No, you can just leave it. Yeah, just done. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions, folks? Sorry, I'll scroll down now, Emma. Yeah, I apologise. It's starting to clonk out a little bit, isn't it? Let me go down there. Anyone else got any questions? Okie dokie. In this instance, I will assume silence is no other questions. So I'll just also do some plan of the official statistics. So what you should always try and take on board, this is probably not a good thing to say to you, but it's probably true. I think it's definitely true, actually. In every paper you sit in sociology, there is always a question on there designed to be tough. So an examiner would say, I gave you structured interviews, which we'd argue is a beautiful 20, but on the flip side of that, you've got to do official statistics. There's always one question on every paper that's tough. And it can be one of the 35 markers and you can avoid it, or it can be a 15. But I think on this paper, the official statistics one is definitely a toughie. But yeah, so that's why you should never kind of panic. There's always a question on them that's designed to be a bit more challenging. So the official statistics one, again, I've realised, I've reflected on myself. I've realised when I don't like something, I make like a sound at the end of when I mention it. I just caught myself doing that yesterday. I think I was talking about something. I was like, I was recording myself it. So I don't particularly like official statistics. I'm not going to lie, but it's what we've got. So we suck it up and do the best we can. So with official statistics, in the 5, to remind you, you start with a definition. Always, what is that term? And remember, your methods specification has a list of every term they can ask you. So official statistics, no, it's not going to do it. Okay, I'll just talk through it and I'll try and go slowly, folks. Official statistics are statistics published by the government and its agencies. Official statistics are statistics published by the government and its agencies. I know it's a really weird definition because you're like, well, official statistics are statistics produced by official agencies, but they're statistics published by the government and its agencies, like the police. That's 1 mark. Always in the 5s, think of it, definition mark, ding. Right, 2 clear points about it. So what they are, they're published by the government and its agencies like the police. They are often numerical or quantitative methods expressed in numbers. So official statistics are statistics produced by the government and its agencies like the police, 1 mark. Clear point mark, they are often numerical or quantitative, expressed in numbers. Remember, we've always got to explain what we mean by quantitative. That's a mark. They're often quantitative or numerical and expressed in numbers. Oh, I might put there, like the official crime statistics. Only because it feels a bit short for a mark. That's kind of why I added like the police at the end, because I feel like it just needs a little bit more. That's not reference the item. If you're thinking, she's referenced the item as well, it's not enough. So what they are, produced by the government and its agencies, they're often numerical or expressed, quantitative methods expressed in numbers, like official statistics. They are cheap to access. So we get them free. They're cheap for us. They're cheap to access. And easy to collect, as they are widely accessible to the public. So they're cheap to access and widely accessible to the public, because they're cheap for us because it costs us nothing. They're free. We just go on the government website, and they're widely accessible because we just go on the government website. So for the public, they're cheap to access and easy to collect as they're accessible to the public. Okay, that's 3 marks there. In the item, if the government examiner is in any doubt you haven't referred to the item, you won't get the mark. In the item, official crime statistics are a recording of the crimes in society. In the item, official crime statistics are a recording of the crimes in society. That's just lifted from the item, basically. I've just taken that. So that won't get me the mark yet. I have to use it in some way. So the official crime statistics are a recording of crimes in society. This means we can establish key patterns and trends and compare crime rates year on year. That's me. That's me showing that I know that we can establish patterns and trends and compare them year on year. So now I've used the item there. I don't just lift, I take an Easter egg or hint in it, and then I add it to it to just develop it. So that's 4 marks. The 5th, by this point, I'm thinking, right, validity, not very valid. Reliable, does it fit? Rep and gen, could be. Just feel like it's a bit wishy. So I feel like, oh, okay, I feel like I've used Grover a little bit, but it doesn't feel quite. I think theory. My last point, I just think theory. So positivists favour the use of official statistics. Sometimes I don't feel like, I always go to Grover, but if I don't feel like it's hitting it, I look to theory. So yeah, positivists favour the use of official statistics as they enable us to see changes in society, and for Durkheim, the extent of social cohesion. So for positivists favour the use of official crime statistics as they enable us to see changes in society, and for Durkheim, the extent of social cohesion. So again, this is quite helpful because in the second year we choose crime because you study the official statistics in the second year. It really helps. So I'll just go back through it. So official statistics are published by the government and its agencies like police. They're often quantitative and expressed in numbers. They are cheap to access and widely accessible to the public. That's mark 3. In the item, official statistics, we can see enable us to establish key patterns and trends and compare crime rates year on year. The 5th mark, positivists favour the use of official statistics as they ensure we can see changes in society, and for Durkheim, the extent of social cohesion. So I'll just explain that. Durkheim felt that in small amounts, crime was good because it unites us in our mutual disgust. But if you get too much crime, so if you see your crime rate start to go up, what happens is it highlights to you society does not have cohesion. It doesn't have solidarity. You could put social solidarity. It doesn't have that togetherness. We're breaking apart if we've got too much crime. A little bit's good, but too much suggests that there's too much social change happening. It's a good measure to keep an eye on those stats and go, oh, they're going up too much. We need some solidarity or some cohesion, some togetherness. So that's the 5 marker. And again, I always like to think of it in those rates in different separate marks. It ensures I make the most of my points and I don't combine them together. So yeah, that's my 5 marker. Sorry for the delay on that. It's quite lagging quite a bit. Does anyone have any questions about that 5 marker? Again, feel free to unmute yourselves or use the chat.